All right. Hello, Los Angeles. Hello, California. Hello, America. And hello, world. Thank you for tuning in to another installment of Politics with Roger. I'm Roger. This is where we like to discuss politics. It's just a little bit after 12 noon in Los Angeles on Friday, February 2nd. Leading off today, I have to say, no matter what I say today or no matter what information I disseminate, it's going to be understating the actual situation and everything that's taking place because there has been just an enormous amount of events just in the last week, but even in the months leading up to this particular week, two big events, the State of the Union address and the release of the FISA memo this morning. Things are just accelerating at such a pace. It's really mind-blowing. So, I'm going to use words that really try to underscore how incredible what we're going through is historic. It's just historic, and that's still understating the situation because so much is going on and so much is yet to be exposed that hasn't already been exposed. But what has been exposed is absolutely incredible. Backing up just a step, for those of you who are new, the whole purpose of this broadcast, this show, is to get through the mountain of information that's put out there through mainstream media, through independent media, filter it out and try to present to you what is relevant, what is important, and try to basically hash out the real political narratives that are taking place in the United States and in the world. So that's what we try to do here. So I'm just going to dive right in. I'm going to talk very fast this week because there's so much going on that I'm not sure how I'm going to get this in the normal amount of time. But anyway, this broadcast is broken down this week in three different sections. The first section or the first story is the complete political victory by Donald Trump, the MAGA movement, the America First movement, the libertarian movement, whatever you want to call the nationalist movement, a movement that I am a part of. We have had complete political victory. We'll get into that in a second. That's the first part. The second part of this broadcast is about the accelerating exposure of corruption, the deep state, globalism, and what I would also begin to start calling the communist deep state of America, because what's being exposed is an attempted takeover of our constitutional government, which by definition would be communistic. And that is all coming to light. I mean, we've been reporting about it for months now, but with the release of the FISA memo, everything is coming to the surface, and now, quote unquote, the masses will be finding out about all the corruption and all the basically communist tactics that have been used to try to overthrow our constitutional republic. So that's the second part, is the accelerating exposure of corruption and information, and the accelerating exposure of secrets. The third part of this broadcast will be the communist counterattack. How will the deep state respond? What is happening in the physical war, in the physical realm? Not just political, not in the war of ideas, not in the information war, but how will the deep state communists strike back? And moves have been made, and we'll get into that shortly. But leading off with the good news first is the complete political victory of the MAGA movement, the America First movement, the libertarian movement, the nationalist movement, and this was underscored at the State of the Union address on Tuesday in the speech that Trump gave. The reason that I say it, that we have complete political victory, is because basically you can see that we've reached a certain plateau. The turn has been made. President Donald Trump is in complete control of the Republican Party, and the Democrat Party, that has been hijacked by the progressive movement. And the progressive movement, by the way, does more resemble a communist movement, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. The Trump Republican Party now is dominating our government, and it's going to continue to dominate our government through the 2018 midterms, and more than likely through 2020, barring any kind of crazy event that changes history, kind of like a September 11th event or something like that. The reason I say that, the president came out on Tuesday in the State of the Union, gave a speech about unity, a speech about America first, putting the interests of Americans first. And he also outlined how America is becoming great again. And the tactic that the Democrat Party used as a party, and you could see this if you watch the speech, was they refused to stand or clap for anything that the president said. And this is going to backfire on them quite significantly in the midterm elections in 2018 and 2020. The reason I say that is because the Dems refused to or failed to recognize or support American prosperity, failed to support or recognize the raging economy, the increase in wages. They failed to recognize or support real American heroes that were profiled in American disasters. We had the police officer in New Mexico. They just simply failed to acknowledge, support, or respond to any of this in a positive way. And this will come back to haunt them because, any Republican candidate for Congress or Senate that is conscious or knows what they're doing politically will simply highlight the Democrats' refusal to support any of these positive things that are happening in America. The Democrats failed to recognize or support real American victims or acknowledge them. Donald Trump invited the victims of illegal immigration, parents of children who were murdered by illegal immigrants, non-citizens to this country, and the Democrats refused to even acknowledge them, support them in any way. And this is devastating politically. We'll get to that point in a second too, because actually I'll just tell you, when polls were taken after the speech itself, even on what we call leftist outlets like MSNBC or Politico on Twitter or NBC, ABC, CBS, the usual suspects, people overwhelmingly approved of the president's speech, even on these quote-unquote left-wing media outlets. So the way the Democrats behaved is very much going to backfire. Other examples, they failed to recognize, acknowledge, or even support the point that black unemployment is at its lowest level in history. They sat on their hands, and people took notice, and people will continue to take notice into 2018, 2020, and possibly beyond. They failed to recognize, acknowledge, or support again the country's motto, "In God We Trust." So basically, Democrats have taken an anti-American position, anti-Christian position, anti-family, anti-prosperity position, and basically all the Democrat Party has left in its platform is that we hate the president, and they seem to still be supporting non-citizens to this country. I'm telling you today, and by the way, the media, the typical Democrat media, MSNBC, CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC, all the TV outlets and everything else, they're trying to cover for the Democrats. They try to support the Democrat Party, downplaying the president's speech, saying what you could predict that they're going to say, saying it wasn't a good speech, saying that the president's lying. But the problem they're having is that people around the country are seeing the prosperity. People around the country are seeing the changes and the positive changes. And this already discredited mainstream media industrial complex for the Democrat Party, which already had lost credibility through the Russian collusion conspiracy theory. It just continues to go, they continue to fall further and further away from reality, and thus they're losing their influence. What little influence they have is just completely, the bottom is falling out. So I'll tell you right now, the Democrat Party, the modern Democrat Party is dead. This Democrat Party that is led by the progressives, it's not the same Democrat Party that it was 20 years ago. I even said a few months ago on this program, I'm going to try to differentiate from people that call themselves liberals and progressives, because the liberals I know, although a lot of times we have disagreements about policies and politics, the liberals that I've known most of my life are clear-thinking people who support our country, where this progressive movement that has taken over the Democrat Party is now clearly an anti-American party, anti-U.S. citizen party, and they expose themselves for the entire world to see at the State of the Union address. This is why I say the Democrat Party today is dead. They will they will continue to lose. As every day passes, this current Democrat Party is losing support while Trump's Republican Party continues to gain support. So unless the Democrat Party makes reforms itself or pivots, they will continue to lose. And I know that sounds like a great thing, but for our country to be as strong as it could be, we really do want two functioning parties debating ideas. But before we get back to that, there's a few things that are going to happen. The current leadership of the Democrat Party is going to have to be removed, and we'll get to that. I just want to look through my notes real quick to make sure I didn't miss anything. One just note I wanted to make. Michael Wolff, who the mainstream media was touting as this incredible author, this incredible journalist, this incredible source of information, he wrote the book Fire and Fury that came out a couple weeks ago. It was supposed to be this big expose, this big tell-all about the Donald Trump administration. He was giving an interview on Morning Joe. Scarborough, hardly a fan of Donald Trump, actually one of the biggest critics of the Trump administration since the beginning. And they actually threw Michael Wolff off the set because they were so upset with his lack of verification, his conjecture. They basically figured out in real time that Michael Wolff is not a good source of information, and Mika Brzezinski just threw him off the set, which is incredible because you got fake news throwing one of their own, another fake news perpetrator under the bus and kicking him off the set of their television show. Quite incredible. Just wanted to make that point. Democrat Party, in the realm of ideas, in the information war, they have lost. The MAGA movement, the Trump movement has had complete political victory. So we can celebrate that. I think we're going to have a great period of prosperity here in America. And again, praying that nothing dramatic or a giant event shifts the direction of the country. But if we continue on our current trajectory and Donald Trump continues to follow through with the policies and the platform that he has presented to the American people, the future is very, very bright. But before we get to that, we'll talk about the other two legs now. Number two, the accelerating exposure of crimes, treason, and communist tactics by the deep state, by the globalists, by what we call the establishment prior to the election of Donald Trump. And this does include some Republicans as well. Most of those Republicans are kind of out of the picture. When I say Republicans, I mean the Mitt Romneys, the John McCains, anybody who was brought up by George H.W. Bush or the Bush faction of the Republican Party. These were also deep state operators. We can circle back to that later. This morning, Friday morning, the FISA memo was released by our government, by the president. Earlier in the week, Monday, Congress voted to release the FISA memo. And this memo was basically going to verify what we've been reporting for quite a long time. But now, again, the masses are going to see for themselves and finally understand that, well, there's a lot of things that are being exposed. Number one, it's going to expose once and for all that this whole Russian collusion conspiracy theory that has been advanced. And let us not forget that MSNBC, CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC, Politico, the New York Times, BuzzFeed have been reporting on this Russian collusion conspiracy theory for what, almost 15, 16 months, even before Donald Trump won the election in November of 2016. They've been reporting about this fake news. The FISA memo, once and for all, would put this to rest for any clear-thinking people who see it and understand it are going to know that the Russian collusion theory was a made-up thing. We've posted a meme almost every week or almost on all my broadcasts, a meme about how a fake dossier was presented to the FISA court to okay or to get the green light to spy on the president and the president's allies illegally. And this includes people in the press and the media. And totally illegal. It's the government using its apparatus to basically spy on American citizens without a warrant or without probable cause. And for those that don't understand constitutionalism, I think the easiest way to break this down is that our government exists to serve the people. So the government had crossed the line from serving the people to basically oppressing the people. And not only is it unconstitutional, it's criminal. And all this is coming out in the FISA court, the FISA memo that was released. The FISA memo is exposing collusion by the DOJ, the FBI, the Democrat Party, and of course the Obama administration. This FISA memo is going to be very, very embarrassing to the Obama administration. And again, perhaps criminal. We'll see where it all leads, but we're going to find out, or we now know, or we knew before, but now the entire country is going to know that the Obama administration was basically quarterbacking all this spying and quarterbacking all this illegal activity. It will lead up to former President Obama. I don't know when, but it's going to come to that point. This is high treason. It is an attempt to overthrow and overpower a legitimate constitutional election using government agencies to persecute American citizens. Bombshell stuff. It's gonna usher in a change in this country that we really haven't seen probably since Watergate. And there's still a lot more that's going to come out, because the spying is one thing. There's still plenty of other things to get to. I'll get to that in just a second. The NSA, the IRS, the DOJ, FBI, CIA, all agencies turned against the American citizens during the Obama administration. So just incredible that all this stuff is now finally coming out to the public. And we're going to find out that all the quote-unquote conspiracy theorists on the right, we have been right for a long, long time about a lot of this information. So vindication is nice, but what's even better is law and order will be restored to this country. We're going to get our government back. When I say we, I don't mean Republicans. I mean we, the people. And yeah, you know, I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed when all the information comes out, not just by the corruption in the government and using the agencies, but some of the other things I'm talking about in a second. Just one note, Andrew McCabe, who quit the FBI earlier this week, resigned. It is said that he is now singing like a bird and it's turned informant. This was by a QAnon post. We'll talk about QAnon later in this broadcast, but and he's not, and the Q team or the Q individual is not the only one who has made this conjecture, but Andrew McCabe looks like he's turned state's evidence and is spilling the beans. Just basically turned informant against the deep state, the communist deep state. Now, there's a lot of other information that will come out. This is just the first domino, believe it or not, the FISA memo and the spying and the fact that the government was turned against the American people to oppress the American people. There's a lot of talk about Operation Castaway and Fast and Furious. These are basically gun-running operations during the Obama administration. He and Eric Holder oversaw the movement of arms to ISIS, basically using the gang MS-13 as a conduit. And this will come out more, but look into this yourself. Look into Operation Castaway. These things are going to come back to surface. ISIS used these arms for the Arab Spring and to basically take over the entire Middle East all the way up into Syria. And, when we said that, we said during the Obama administration that America is funding ISIS, is arming ISIS, and people thought we were crazy. We'll be vindicated on this as well. But these stories are about to come out. What else is going to come out? I'm not sure when, but it's still in the news and it's still in the chatter, is all the information about child trafficking and sex trafficking in this country. It's going to be heartbreaking. Child sex slavery. That's not necessarily leaked in the FISA memo, but again, I'm just calling the FISA memo the first domino. A lot of this information will continue to come out as more and more gets exposed. We're seeing an acceleration of all this exposure, and it's going to lead to all these points that we've been talking about for a long time, and this is what's coming up next. And as we reported last week, the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Foundation's under investigation. Uranium One is back under investigation, and the DNC corruption during the 2016 primary, the death of Seth Rich, a lot of the information that Donna Brazil had dropped. Everything's going to come out. Everything's going to come out. And this FISA memo was just the first big domino to hit. So the deep state, the communist deep state, is in a desperate mode. And like it has been said by Sean Hannity, the noose is tightening. Has been said in a lot of right-wing news. They're becoming cornered cornered rats, basically. But this is what makes them dangerous, because we are now in a season of false flags, or potential false flags, because the deep state, the communist state, the globalists, they have nothing to lose at this point, because they have been contained. And this is the third part of this broadcast. The third leg of this broadcast is, what will the deep state, the communist state, do next to counterattack? They are in desperation. Well, the first thing, and this is pretty much par for the course, as we know, the media is going to lie and try to cover up for them. I imagine we haven't heard the media response to the FISA memo being released, but they'll do their typical thing. To discredit, they'll say it's fake. They'll say that the FISA memo is irrelevant. It's a nothing burger. Whatever it is that they'll say for their lemmings, for the sheep, for the people that follow them, who are still under their brainwashing of leftist mainstream media. So the media will go into full gear to try to discredit the FISA memo. And that's going to work for a significant percentage of the population, but for serious political analysts, and for people who are serious about the country, we know what we're looking at when we look at this FISA memo, and it all adds up for us. And the media will not be able to cover up for the FISA memo or what are the other things that are coming out. Now, the other thing that's a big concern is false flag attacks, or just attacks in general. And there is a real danger in this right now, because a false flag attack would be a great benefit right now to the deep state, to the communist deep state. They need to change the narrative. They need to get everyone's mind off of all this corruption. And they need an event to basically take over the news cycle and change the attention, or change the focus of the American people right now. So this is the season of false flags. Now, InfoWars has reported, and by the way, I have to say, InfoWars, they released the FISA memo last week. They've been ahead of everybody on everything. Great source, great resource for all this hardcore information, and they've been very, very accurate. And I just wanted to say that. Now, also this week on InfoWars, they've had an informant who they only call Zach, someone who's in the intelligence community. And you can look this up for yourself. Go to YouTube and just put Zach and InfoWars. You can listen to his interviews for yourself. He's been a repeating guest on the show, and he dropped some bombshells on Thursday afternoon. Number one was, if y'all remember, the missile scare in Hawaii that happened, I think this is now 3 or 4 weeks ago. There was indeed a missile strike, or a missile fired from a submarine towards Hawaii that was intercepted. This is what was dropped by Zach on InfoWars. The purpose of this missile strike was to try to get President Trump to fire back at North Korea and potentially start a war with North Korea. And this is what I mean by a false flag event changing the narrative. I mean, had we attacked North Korea and gotten into a war with North Korea, then we'd still be talking about the war with North Korea instead of the FISA memo. So that's incredible intelligence. You can look it up for yourself, and we're going to keep an eye on it, because a lot of this information can't be verified. But I just want to point out, this is the media environment that we're in today. What's reported is oftentimes way behind what people already know, or the speculation that is coming up. We'll talk about this in a second, because there's another event that kind of reflects what I'm saying. The second bombshell that he dropped was about the train derailment this week on Wednesday. There's a train full of GOP congressmen heading to a retreat that was derailed by a garbage truck. Now, I hope that my audience, because I know my audience is smart, we know that there's way more to this story than what was reported in mainstream media. This was an attack either to send a message or to kill the Republicans on board. Now, let me back up a step. Let me back up 2 steps, actually. Zach has reported, and this makes a lot of sense, that our government is currently in a war footing with itself. What I mean is we're at all-out war within our government. This train full of Republicans was heading for a location called Greenbrier, which is a World War II bunker, and it's also it's considered a COG facility, which is a continuance of government facility, which is there for crisis and war, basically. So, one third of our Congress is in a bunker right now, probably with the president hunkering down for whatever is coming next. But this train was trailed by helicopters. It was trailed by a drone, and it still ran into this garbage truck. Now, by the way, if you think a garbage truck just happened to be put on the track at the time that train full of Republicans were put on it, then you're behind the curve. This was a deliberate attack. The only person who died was the quote unquote driver of the truck. And this is speculation here, but if you want to know what I think the truck was controlled by remote control. The driver of the truck was probably killed. Was definitely killed before being placed into the truck. They placed the dead driver in the truck. They rolled the truck onto the track by remote control when the train rolled up, or when the train traveled up, creating the collision. And this is what was more or less said by Zach on InfoWars. But it was certainly not a coincidence, and it's part of a deep state attack, a communist attack on our government, and very, very serious. And this is not unlike the shooting that we saw at the baseball field earlier this year, trying to kill Republican congressmen. Our Republican congressmen are in danger right now, and they need to be very aware and just vigilant for their own safety, because the deep state is looking to strike back. And these are just a couple examples. Now, the third big bombshell that Zach had dropped on Thursday was that there is a plan. Now, I just slow down when I say this, because a lot of times we are able to stop these attacks by getting out in front of it and sharing it and exposing it. But Zach had said there's a plot, a terrorist plot that is planned at the Super Bowl using Somali operatives to attack the Super Bowl and these sleeper cells. Now, this is what I mean by the modern news environment as well, because by exposing these kind of potential attacks, we stop the attacks, because if we already know that it's going to happen, then the deep state or whoever is planning on perpetrating these attacks can't go through with them, because they know that they'll be found out. So this was dropped on InfoWars on Thursday afternoon. Pray for the people at the Super Bowl. Pray that we just have a great football game and that there's no event that takes place like a terrorist attack. That would be horrible. But it sounds like there was a plan, or there is a plan, or hopefully was a plan. Hopefully it is not planned anymore, for a terrorist attack on the Super Bowl using Somalis that are in Minneapolis. Well, anyway, I'm not going to get into terrorist cells and Somalians, but just put two and two together. They're there. So hopefully this doesn't happen. But three big bombshells dropped by Zach on InfoWars. And this is how we're looking for the deep state, the communist state, to fire back. They are cornered rats, and they're going to have to pull off something very dramatic if they're going to get out of the mess they're in. Because politically, again, politically, there is support to end the corruption, to indict those who are corrupt, and basically for we the American people to take control of our government again. And when it's exposed again, not just to us here in the independent media, but it's exposed to people all around the country, how our government has been used to oppress its own people, there's going to be an outcry and a big change. So the deep state, the communist state, has to respond. They have to react, and their backs are to the wall. So it's a very dangerous time right now, and hopefully we get out of this without anything crazy going on, so we can just have prosperity for the next 3 to 7 years in the Trump administration. But the swamp is being drained as promised. I think we all knew it wasn't going to be easy. It's happening, and pray to God that again we just get through this without any false flag attack or crazy event. The last thing the deep state, the communist state, might try is Robert Mueller is still lurking out there. The Russian collusion narrative already fell apart. There's some speculation maybe he could arrest someone from Trump's family or Jared Kushner on some trumped up charges. like obstruction or something like that. We'll see how that plays out. We'll see what cards Robert Mueller has left, if any. He's still out there, but his power and influence and ability to basically derail the MAGA movement, the Trump movement, is decreasing every day. The longer he hangs out there without any kind of evidence or legal authority to do anything. So those are the three legs. I just want to talk about a few of the other stories now. Just some of the other things that are happening out there, and a lot of it does tie into what's happening here in America. Number one, and we talked about a little bit last week, the collapse of the EU. This week there was a meeting between the new Austrian prime minister and Hungary's prime minister. You see nationalism starting to rise all over Europe, which is a great thing. This, of course, started with Brexit back in 2015 or 2016. The Brexit vote, if you all remember that. I think it was in 2016. And you also see Italy, a new nationalist party rising in Italy. So, this mass migration that has come to Europe has now gotten the attention of most Europeans, many Europeans, and now they are starting to fight back with their own nationalist movements, trying to get their sovereignty back. So again, the EU is just in total collapse. Thank God. And this global totalitarian, this global control grid that was being set up by the globalists is collapsing. So that's what we're happy about. On the culture side of things, and this kind of ties into the politics of the day here in America, we saw the Grammy Awards this week. It was a total flop. Ratings are way down. It was a very political show. Instead of celebrating music, they basically just use it to bash Trump. I guess I didn't watch it. This is just from what I read. But anyway, ratings way down. Hollywood in total collapse. The influence of Hollywood way down. And the Grammys flop, or the low ratings there. Just more evidence of all that. So outstanding. Again, until the Democrat Party and our popular culture pivots away from hating Trump, you'll see these trends continue. And finally, last but not least, I didn't forget about QAnon. QAnon's still out there leaving breadcrumbs and putting a lot of things out. QAnon mentioned about Andrew McCabe singing. I guess there was a post out there this week that there was 500 more arrests in California regarding pedophilia. In the Comey memo, the QAnon exposed a Comey memo, a James Comey memo, talking about activating sleeper cells. So that's another indication of a possible counterattack by the communist deep state, something to keep an eye on. There were tons of, I shouldn't say tons, but there were multiple plane crashes and helicopter crashes this week. I'll let you all look into that yourselves. I just want to highlight one helicopter crash of a GM of the Standard Hotel in West Hollywood, which had something to do with Adam Schiff and also pedophilia. So, a lot of this is conjecture, so I'm just not going to get into it too much. But there is so much going on the surface and beneath the surface. Our political environment right now is kind of like a Hollywood movie. Things that you wouldn't believe going on. Planes and helicopters falling out of the air being reported as crashes. Secret dark societies, secret societies in our government and secret dark societies in Hollywood. All these secrets are coming out. So anyway, quite a crazy week. And like I said, with all this information, I'm still understating really the significance of everything that is happening. It's not only historical. It's a revolution in information and revelation and understanding that is happening in this country and happening in the world. So that was a mouthful. So just to summarize, though, we have had complete political victory, so that's a wonderful thing. I would say we have won the information war, at least the information battle. I mean, the information war will always be ongoing and continuing, but in the short to midterm, we have complete victory in the information political war. We have accelerating exposure of corruption by the deep state, by the communist deep state in America and the communist globalists. And be prepared for a counter strike of some kind. Keep an eye out for false flag attacks. Don't listen to the mainstream media, the media industrial complex when these attacks happen. And we'll just see what happens next week. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. I encourage you to pray. And, if we can get through the next couple of months and some key people get arrested for the crimes that they committed, maybe we'll just have some prosperity and peace by the end of the year. Let's pray. I hope so. Thank you, guys.